Good day, and welcome to lesson 14 in our study of the book of Daniel. This is only a small section in chapter 8. It's only verses 9 to 14, but they're also important verses, and it's difficult to understand what these visions meant and the prophecy which they foretold without understanding some of the history involved around what Daniel saw was going to happen. So there's a few things that should be noted about this. First of all, the previous few chapters had been written in Aramaic because they concerned the people of Persia, of Mede-Persia. Starting in chapter 8, we're back into Hebrew again because this concerns the people of Jerusalem and of Judea more so. And it also would be foolish to write what was going to happen against the Medes and the Persians in their own language so they could understand it at a time before it happened. Secondly, this one section concerns primarily one person, although the end of the chapter concerns both this person and another person whom we'll mention next week. And the other thing is that the history of this, which is recorded primarily in two books, 1st and 2nd Maccabees, is not in our Bible, although it is in the Roman Catholic Bible and it is in the Apocrypha. But in order to really get the history of this, you have to go to 1st and 2nd Maccabees. And it's difficult to understand how the prophecies work out without understanding some of the history. So just to summarize a bit, Daniel had this vision in the 3rd year of King Belshazzar's reign. So the Medes Persians were still in control when he had this vision. And he had this vision which concerned the Medes and Persians about the ram with the 2 horns, which conquered and trampled almost everything in its sight and became very powerful, which the Medes and Persians did. Then it was overtaken by this goat which had 1 large horn, which was felt to represent Alexander, because it was the Greek Empire which overtook the Medes and the Persians. And Alexander conquered almost all the known world in about 12 years. In fact, when he died at 33, he was lamenting the fact that there were no further worlds to conquer. But then it said in his vision that the horn broke off and 4 other horns sprung up. And when Alexander died, his kingdom, his empire, was divided among 4 of his top generals. One of them was a kingdom called the Seleucians. And over the next few years, this one kingdom became more powerful than some of the other ones under a king by the name of Antiochus III. And he had a son who came about called Antiochus IV. He called himself Epiphanes, Antiochus IV Epiphanes, which really meant God manifest. So this one person felt that he was actually the manifestation of God himself. He conquered a lot of the land that Alexander had previously conquered, and which had slipped away from the empire after it had divided into 4 groups. So he conquered south towards Egypt again, he conquered again back towards Greece, and he also conquered in towards Judea. And it was said that perhaps part of the reason that he conquered in towards Judea was because he was somewhat defeated or prevented by Roman soldiers from entering more into Egypt. So therefore he went into Judea somewhat by default. Anyway, this man, Antiochus Epiphanes, is what is spoken of in this section. And it said when, starting at back in verse 8, when the male goat grew very great, but when he became strong, the large horn, which is Alexander, was broken, he died, and in place of it, 4 notable ones came up towards the 4 winds of heaven, the 4 horns representing the 4 generals which took over the 4 divisions of Alexander's empire. And out of one of them came a little horn which grew exceedingly great towards the south, towards the east, and towards the glorious land. So this little horn was the Seleucid Empire under Antiochus, which became more powerful than the other 3 empires under Alexander's generals. And he conquered towards Egypt, towards Greece, and in towards the glorious land, which really means Israel or Judea. And it grew up to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host and some of the stars to the ground. Referring to the saints and referring to the people of Judea, he became very, very hostile. He became one of the most cruel dictators, cruel individuals probably the earth has ever seen. He killed over 80,000 of the Jewish people, took many thousands of others into captivity, and it says he grew up, he cast down some of the host, some of the Judean people, some of the people in Judea, and some of the stars to the ground, and trampled them. He had no evidence of sympathy or empathy towards the people in Judea at all. And the scenes that 1st and 2nd Maccabees describe are very graphic, but they give some ideas of how despicable and how cruel this person was, and how deceitful they were. 1st Maccabees 1:29-32 says this: And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute into the cities of Judah, who came unto Jerusalem with a great multitude, and spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city, and smote it very sore, and destroyed much people of Israel. And when he had taken the spoils of the city, he set it on fire, and pulled down the houses and walls thereof on every side. But the women and children took they captive, and possessed the cattle. So Antiochus went into the cities of Judea, into the cities of Jerusalem, and took them by deceit. And this is important, as we will see next week when we finish off the chapter, the last part of chapter 8. It says, he trampled some of them. He exalted himself as high as the prince of the host. And by prince of the host, he felt that he himself was God. He tried to make himself a new god, a new object of worship in the area. He tried to take over from God himself, is what this is really trying to say. He boasted himself up. He built himself up to this level. And by doing that, the daily sacrifices were taken away. So he stopped the sacrifice, the Jewish sacrifice in the temple. He stopped them from doing that. He stopped these rituals. He took away the Jewish feasts. And it says the place of sanctuary was cast down. It was defiled. It is said that he even took a pig into the sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, sacrificed it, and spread the blood around. Now, pigs were considered unclean by the Jewish people, and therefore this defiled the sanctuary completely. This is what he means by the place of the sanctuary was cast down. And because of transgression, an army was given over to the horn to oppose the daily sacrifices. His army opposed the sacrifices that the Jewish people had done in the temple, the Jewish priests had done, and he cast all truth down to the ground. He destroyed the truth of what the Jewish religion was about. He destroyed the religion itself. He prevented the Jewish people from practicing their religion, their feasts, and their festivals, and their sacrifices. And he says he did all this and he prospered. There are some other portions of First and Second Maccabees which really give an idea of what he was really like. And let me read these to you. From First Maccabees chapter 1, 52 to 61, it says, "Then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit, every one that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land, and drove the Israelites into secret places, even wheresoever they could flee for succor. Now the 15th day of the month Cassiu, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar, and builded idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side, and burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had torn in pieces the books of the law which they found, they burnt them with fire. And whatsoever was found with any book of the testament, or if any committed to the law, the king's commandment was that they should be put them to death. Thus did they, by their authority, unto the Israelites every month, to as many as were found in the cities. Now the 25th day of the month they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of God. At which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised. And they hanged the infants about their necks and rifled the houses and slew them that had circumcised them." So circumcision was one of the laws of the Jewish nation. But it was the idea of Antiochus to make everybody conform to Greek symbolism, Greek religion, Greek practices. So they stopped the Jewish festivals. They put festivals to Bacchus, the god of pleasure, the Greek god of pleasure, and to Saturnalia, the god of Saturn. They took away the Jewish festivals and put Greek festivals in their places. Because circumcision was part of the Jewish law, then they punished anybody who had their children circumcised. It was an idea to completely Hellenize all of the Jewish people. And this was done under the so-called reign of this king of Syria, king of the Seleucid Empire, this King Antiochus. And this was all done, and they prospered while they were doing this. They seemed to take over the land. They seemed to take over and become prosperous in this land by doing these abominable things. And again, in 1 Maccabees 1, 41 to 50, it says, "Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and every one should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings, and sacrifice, and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars, and groves, and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts. That they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all the manner of uncleanliness and profanation, to the end they might forget the law, and change all the ordinances. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die." So this is the report given in First Maccabees about the actions of King Antiochus against the Jewish people. And this is important because this is a prophecy that was given to Daniel 300 or 400 years before this event actually took place. And although Daniel's prophecy foresaw this, this also, as a prophecy, was also a double prophecy, because this foresaw other things still in the future, which we will cover next week. So then, this was all of some of the things that this king did to the Jewish people. And Daniel then in this vision said, I heard a holy one speaking, and still another holy one said to that certain one who was speaking, how long will the vision be concerning the daily sacrifices and the transgression of desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, for 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. During this time, there were certain people who refused to abide by the laws that Antiochus had set up. And one of these was an elderly priest in one of the villages who refused to obey when the king's commander came, expecting tribute and expecting some reverence towards the king and towards his emissary. But instead, this priest and his sons killed the emissary of King Antiochus and fled into the hills. These few people then had a band gather around them, and they became known as the Maccabees. And the Maccabees went on to rescue and retrieve the city of Jerusalem and the temple from the the previous army, which had headed the Seleucid army, which was there. And it is said that the temple, the Maccabees finished restoration and cleansed the temple in the year on December 14th, 164 BC. If you go back 2,300 days, which it says here for 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. If you go back 2,300 days, you go back to about 170 BC when Antiochus' oppression of the Jews began. And then it ended in this village of Modian when a priest named Mattathias killed the commander of the Seleucid army, the representative of the king. When he and his sons killed those people, and then they fled into the hills and became known as the Maccabees. The events of this passage are graphic, not very easy to listen to, but we have to understand that there are things in this world that are very difficult to understand, very difficult to hear. But at the same time, they also may portray events in the future which are even more difficult than what we're talking about in this lesson. If what Daniel saw in his visions concerning the ram and the goat, and then the change in leadership after Alexander died, and so forth to this present leader, Antiochus, then we have to, that has all happened. We know it's happened because now it's history. It wasn't history when Daniel saw it, but now it's history. We have to also very carefully consider that what he spoke of in the future is also coming and will come to pass as he foresaw it. It says, "For 2,300 days, and the sanctuary shall be cleansed." Even this goes back almost to the date, from the beginning of the persecution to the cleaning of the sanctuary. So, this whole part about this king represents a persecution of the Jewish people unlike anything that had happened before. In fact, it is said that this is the first time in history where a nation was persecuted entirely for its religious beliefs. There were many persecutions before, but this is the first time it was done only on the basis of religion. So this is the history behind this part of Daniel, this part of the vision. And next week we're going to get into how this vision corresponds to the rest, the future events that may take place, and how the life and the activities of this king reflect the activities foretold of a man we know as Antichrist in the end times. Because it says this, as it says in verse 17, understand, Son of Man, that the vision refers to the time of the end. And this is what we have to get into next week. So again, thanks for watching. This is kind of a difficult part to talk about, but we have to realize that there are difficult times in the history and in the referred to in the Bible or in the para-biblical literature, which we have to consider and look at if we're going to understand what future problems and events may be coming. So thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join me next week as we finish chapter 8. Bye for now.